So, over the past couple of weeks, there has been quite an interesting discussion brewing involving a Nintendo system, and it's probably not the one you would think it would be. You would think that this would have something to do with the Nintendo Switch 2, but no. A lot of people are starting to notice something with the Nintendo 3DS, and specifically the price of the Nintendo 3DS system. There have been many different articles written by various websites. Hell, Spawnwave made a video last night talking about this. I'll be honest, I didn't watch his video, so if I tend to cover something that he mentioned in his video, I do apologize. It's YouTube. This sort of stuff does happen, but go check out his video after watching mine, because I think at the end of the day, I'm going to have a little bit of a differentiating opinion than he does on this topic. But there is one thing that is very clear. It's not cheap to buy a Nintendo 3DS at the end of 2025 or now early into 2026. Even GameStop is giving you more trading credit for these systems, thus signaling it's a desirable platform. Now, when you look at the Nintendo 3DS and all of its variants, obviously this is a system that sold 75 million units, so I mean, rarity doesn't really play a huge role in this. So what's going on with the system? What are these prices that we're talking about? What are some things you should look out for? And why is this happening? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. First time on the channel, hit that subscribe button, pal. So let's just go ahead and head over to eBay, Edward Bay. Go see how Edward is doing. We'll take away the parameters here, and you can see right off of the jump, you know, this is a system that I feel like a lot of people would have anticipated it being relatively cheap, you know, maybe $80, $90 to buy one of these systems because of the, you know, amount of systems that were out on the marketplace and stuff. But you could clearly see with a quick scroll through here that that's not really the case. And you might notice there are some interesting things going on here. You're probably seeing this system, $145. This thing looks beat all to hell. You know, the screen is all jacked up and wonky. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I feel that prices are indeed going up. Because as a handheld system, you do have to factor in that people probably didn't take the best care of these, especially considering that eventually these were very cheap systems to come across, whether you're talking about at your local game retailer that had used systems of it, or even places like Facebook Marketplace or whatnot. It was very easy to attain 3DSs at one point in time. People seem to be getting rid of these in droves, but now the crusty ones with the broken screens and stuff like that aren't exactly in the best shape, but they're still asking $150 for the system. When you really start to break out a lot of things with this, though, you have to look at something when you are actually looking at the system, because I actually picked up a 3DS about probably a year and a half ago or so because my 3DS was giving me problems. And this is where the variants kind of come into play, because you can see here the new Nintendo 3DS XL and the new Nintendo 3DS LL, and you're like, I don't remember the L. What's the LL? What's going on with that? That is actually a Japanese variant of the Nintendo 3DS. So instead of the Nintendo 3DS XL in Japan, it was called the Nintendo 3DS LL in Japan. So if we're looking for like a new Nintendo 3DS XL system, like these prices are pretty crazy. You know, a you know, $300, like what are you talking about with this? Like that is a lot of money. A new 3DS XL with 32 gigs, power, case, AR cards. You know, we're nearing $400 on just bids alone. If we take a look at, you know, ending soonest or something like that, we could probably see some very interesting things. You know, okay, it's a variant, but still $355 on bids. You know, looking for $400 for your Nintendo 3DS Monster Hunter Generations Edition. And I get it. There are going to be variants within these systems that will increase the price of it. But still, this does seem like quite a lot of money for systems that, when they first came out, I mean, let's be real, they weren't really all that desirable. Bro, I was there day one. I was at Walmart in a podunk redneck town trying to buy a 3DS when it first came out at a midnight launch, and it was just me and my buddy. It was just the two of us. But obviously, this still has 1 day and 2 hours left. So this is going to skyrocket in price. And you could just see like trends going on with this. And the more that people start to notice these things, the more that people are going to be looking, for 3DS systems. Now you could still get some cheaper ones here, with but like, look, Midnight Purple in box, $217. I get it. There's variants and stuff like that people do desire and people do like, but what is kind of causing this? Because I think if you ask the average person, like, what does a 3DS cost? I don't think they're talking about these kind of prices. I think everyone's kind of in the mindset like, oh, you can get a nice one for like $100. Obviously there's going to be variants and stuff out there, but the nice ones are like $100. So what is the root cause of this? We did talk a little bit about damage and stuff like that potentially being a cause, but I think there are lots of other factors at play with this as well. First off, the 3DS has one thing that no other handheld really has. The whole 3D thing. It's kind of like a Virtual Boy, where if you want that 3D effect, you need a 3DS to do it. And obviously there are, a couple, I think there's like a handheld out there now that does like 3D that's like way expensive and stuff like that. A lot of people aren't going to mess around with that sort of stuff though. But if you're looking for a handheld that does the 3D stuff and you have that nostalgia, which is another thing to tie into with this, you kind of need a 3DS. Like, it's going to be a different experience playing 3DS games on an emulator or something like that. Now, granted, on an emulator, you could do things like 4K visuals and internal resolution, upscaling and stuff like that. A game like Metroid Samus Returns looks absolutely fantastic. But if you want that touchscreen support, you want that 3D visual effect, you have to have a 3DS to do it. And if you don't have a 3DS, does it kind of take away a little bit from the game? A lot of people did indeed turn that 3D off. But when you think about the era of the 3DS, think about when this came out. This came out in a time frame where the kids who maybe, the 3DS was their first system in the early teens and stuff, they're now adults. They have a little bit of money. I mean, maybe, with this economy, who knows? But, they want to relive some childhood memories and stuff like that. Another thing about the 3DS is it's a very capable system as far as what you can do with it, kind of beyond what the system was intended to do. A 3DS is very easy to hack, and you can have access to things like the HShop, which allows you to just download the entire 3DS library onto an internal SD card. And then you don't have to buy games. And even if you look at games, a lot of games are pretty cheap for the system as well. You also have the DS library that can be played on the 3DS, which is a great thing to do. You could buy those cartridges for, full cartridge collections of Nintendo DS games for, a couple bucks on something like Amazon or something like that. Those multi-card cartridges. I've taken a look at one before. They're fine. It's a bunch of DS games. You can add your own games to it if you want to. And, of course, the fact that, you have emulation on this thing. Especially if you're messing with the new 3DS. That actually opens up more emulation possibilities. So while you're not going to be running high-end, PS2 stuff or anything like that, if you're looking for a system that you could fit in your pocket, especially, an earlier 3DS model or a new 3DS standard model, then you have the ability to play NES, Super Nintendo, Sega Master System, a bunch of different systems on the go alongside of the games that you have. So I think it's a very versatile system. Decent battery life as well when it's fully charged and stuff like that. A good portability aspect. A lot of nostalgia tied into it. But I think there's one other thing that a lot of people are realizing. Gaming's in a weird spot, dude. The Nintendo Switch is a 450 soon to be or Switch 2 I should say, is a 450 soon to be $500 system. It's coming in 2026. I will put money on the base model Switch 2 being $500. You got $70 and $80 games. A lot of people are being turned off by modern gaming. And I get the reason why, you know, and that's just Nintendo. And Nintendo's kind of really one of the cheaper, at least on the hardware side of things, when you look at stuff what's going on with PlayStation and Xbox and stuff like that. You know, a drip feed of games on those platforms. A lot of people are just kind of tired of the modern gaming scene. You know, DLC, buggy games, mandatory patches, and all this sort of stuff. Whereas something like a 3DS that's very easy to hack, that gives you access to tons of libraries, can feed into your nostalgia, and still offer you great gameplay experiences with first-party Nintendo IPs, some interesting third-party games, things like touchscreen controls and 3D that can only really be experienced on the system itself. You know, I think a lot of this kind of makes sense. And it's not even necessarily very new. Here's kind of the shocker thing. When I was looking at 3DS systems a year and a half or so ago to buy one, it might actually have been less than that, I completely noticed this market. It was craziness. I was like, why is this so expensive? Like, what is going on here? So I ended up buying a Japanese equivalent because I didn't really care. You know, it was a hacked system anyways, or a system that I was going to hack and then make it region free because, of course, the 3DS is region locked straight out of the gate. So you're going to have to hack it anyways. And it was a little bit cheaper, but even then, like the Japanese counterpart of a new 3DS system that was the smaller one, it was still, you know, a bit of a pricey endeavor. I think people are just waking up to it now. Because I think people are wanting to buy a 3DS. People are wanting to experience the 3DS library either for the first time or once again. People are looking for cheaper alternatives when it comes to gaming. And now they're realizing, hey, those cheaper alternatives are starting to dry up a little bit. The landscape is changing, folks. Yesterday's price isn't today's price. And today's price, well, that's not tomorrow's price either. So expect this to continue. Expect this to be a thing going forward where the 3DS, even though it sold 75 million units, it's still desirable. You know, it's still a system that, you know, people probably have broken them. People have probably mistreated them, but they're still trying to sell them for triple-digit prices on things like eBay. And they might actually get it, which is the craziest thing to think about. Anyways, guys, those are my thoughts on what is happening with the Nintendo 3DS in 2026. Why this has become, you know, undesirable to undeniable all of a sudden, where everyone wants a thing. I think a lot of people want to relive nostalgia. They're tired of modern gaming's tropes and pitfalls and stuff like that. And this is the result of it. You know, a simpler time in gaming when things were just easy. You popped in the game, here you go. You're good to go. Have fun. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. Is there a world where a company could come along and make a system like this that has modern quality of life features but still retains an old school feel? I don't know. Maybe. Give me your thoughts, though, in the comments section down below. Have you looked at 3DS prices within the past year or so? Have you noticed that now all of a sudden they are going up in price? Things seem to be getting more and more expensive. What are your thoughts as to why this is indeed the case? And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. Do some sort of interaction. I guess you can go watch SpawnWave's video now. You know, go ahead and watch this video one more time. You know, just because. And then you could go watch John's video. Just leave it up in the background because who wants to look at that hairline? And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.